Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
Christmas morning in Phoenix should have been peaceful. I woke up expecting hot chocolate-wrapped presents and my mother's famous cinnamon rolls filling the house with warmth. Instead, my younger brother Derek stood in our parents' living room like some corporate executive announcing he had solved my rental property struggles by selling all 8 properties overnight. He dramatically presented each family member with $4,000 checks, claiming the sales generated massive profits. The family erupted in celebration, thanking Derek for his business genius, while I sat frozen in disbelief watching him smugly explain how he had saved our family's financial future through his brilliant real estate maneuvering. The celebration around me felt surreal as Derek basked in praise from our parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who had gathered for Christmas. Everyone kept shaking his hand and patting his back, calling him a financial wizard. My stomach churned as I watched my own family treat Derek like some Wall Street prodigy while barely acknowledging my presence. I pulled Derek aside into Dad's home office away from the festivities. My hands trembled as I demanded explanations about how he could possibly have sold properties that belonged to me. Derek's response chilled me to the bone. He produced a manila folder filled with what appeared to be legitimate contracts complete with official letterheads, notary stamps, and detailed buyer signatures. Every document looked professionally prepared. Derek claimed he had used power of attorney documents to expedite the sales during what he called the holiday market rush. He showed me spreadsheets detailing supposed negotiations with cash buyers from California who were seeking Arizona investment properties. The buyers allegedly wanted quick closings before year-end for tax advantages. According to Derek, they offered premium prices because my properties were in up-and-coming neighborhoods that would soon experience gentrification. Back in the living room, the celebration had intensified. My mother was actually crying tears of joy, thanking Derek for saving the family from what she called my failing investment strategy. She kept saying how worried she had been about my rental properties, especially after hearing about my tenant troubles and repair costs. My father shook Derek's hand repeatedly, telling anyone who would listen that he always knew Derek had superior business instincts. My cousin Jennifer was already planning a vacation to Hawaii with her $4,000. Uncle Robert talked about finally fixing his truck's transmission. Aunt Carol mentioned putting the money toward her daughter's college tuition. Everyone had immediate plans for spending Derek's generous gift, and they all credited him with changing their lives. Derek pulled me back into the office and revealed something that made my blood run cold. He explained that he had told everyone I was too proud and stubborn to ask for help when my rental business started failing. According to his narrative, I was facing foreclosure on multiple properties due to rising interest rates, increasing vacancy rates, and mounting repair costs that I could not afford. Derek positioned himself as the concerned younger brother who stepped in secretly to rescue the family from impending financial disaster. The story Derek had crafted was disturbingly detailed. He claimed that over the past 6 months, he had been quietly monitoring my business situation and networking with potential buyers. When he supposedly found these California investors willing to pay premium prices, he decided to act quickly before my properties went into foreclosure and became worthless. Derek presented himself as the hero who saved not just me, but our entire extended family from financial ruin. As I listened to his elaborate explanation, something nagged at the back of my mind. Derek knew far too many specific details about my rental properties. He mentioned exact repair costs for the Glendale duplex-specific tenant complaints at the Mesa fourplex, and precise vacancy dates for units I had not discussed with anyone outside my property management team. How could Derek possibly know about Mrs. Patterson's plumbing issues or the Henderson family's late rent payments? My suspicion grew when Derek casually mentioned that the Scottsdale rental needed new carpeting after the previous tenant's dog caused damage. I had never told anyone in my family about that particular problem. The property management company had only informed me about the carpet situation 3 weeks earlier through a confidential email report. Then it hit me like a physical blow. Derek had been intercepting my property management emails for months. Somehow he had gained access to my communications with Thomas Rodriguez Maria Santos and the other property managers. Derek had been reading every repair request, every tenant complaint, every vacancy notice, and every financial report. He used this insider knowledge to craft his convincing deception, incorporating real details that only someone with access to confidential information could know. The realization that my own brother had been spying on my business communications for months left me feeling violated and betrayed. Derek had not just stolen money from our family, he had invaded my privacy and used my own business challenges against me. The scope of his deception was far more extensive than a simple lie about selling properties. This was a calculated, long-term manipulation that required planning, technical knowledge, and complete disregard for family loyalty. Boxing Day arrived with our family still riding high on Derek's supposed generosity. The house buzzed with excitement as relatives continued praising Derek's business acumen over leftover turkey and cranberry sauce. Derek had convinced everyone to keep the property sales confidential until January, claiming there were important tax implications that required discretion. He warned that premature disclosure could jeopardize the deals and cost the family thousands in additional taxes. I spent most of December 26th attempting to contact my property managers, but every call went straight to voicemail systems announcing holiday closures until December 29th. Thomas Rodriguez, Maria Santos, Kevin Chang, Linda Morrison, and the other property managers who handled my 8 rental properties were all unreachable. Derek intercepted several of my attempts to make these calls, claiming he had already handled all transition details and that further contact would only create confusion during the handover process. Derek's preparation was frighteningly thorough. He had created fake email accounts impersonating each of my property managers, complete with professional signatures and company logos. These fabricated emails contained convincing property closure notifications, thanking me for years of business and confirming smooth transitions to new ownership. The messages included specific details about final inspections, deposit transfers, and maintenance schedules that made everything appear legitimate to anyone without deep knowledge of property management procedures. During a family dinner that evening, Derek announced his next brilliant move. He planned to use his commission from facilitating the property sales to start his own property management company. Derek explained that his success with my properties had attracted attention from other real estate investors who wanted his expertise. He was already advising our cousin Marcus about potentially selling his commercial building downtown and helping Uncle Robert evaluate refinancing options for his mortgage. The family's admiration for Derek reached new heights as he discussed his entrepreneurial plans. Everyone wanted investment advice from the 26-year-old who had supposedly generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate profits overnight. Derek held court at the dinner table, dispensing financial wisdom and making grandiose promises about future business opportunities he would create for family members. My attempts to verify information or raise questions were quickly dismissed by family members who accused me of being ungrateful and jealous of Derek's success. When I mentioned wanting to speak directly with the buyers about transition details, my mother scolded me for not trusting Derek's competence. My father suggested that my skepticism stemmed from embarrassment about needing Derek's help with my struggling business. Even my girlfriend Sarah, who had been dating me for 8 months, began questioning whether I truly understood my own business affairs. She pulled me aside after dinner and gently suggested that maybe Derek had been protecting me from making poor financial decisions. Sarah pointed out that Derek seemed much more knowledgeable about real estate markets and investment strategies than I had ever appeared. Her doubt in my capabilities stung more than anything my family had said. The worst part was watching Derek manipulate the family's emotions with surgical precision. He made subtle comments about my stress levels and financial anxieties, painting himself as the concerned brother who had been quietly worried about my mental health. Derek suggested that my rental properties had become an overwhelming burden that was affecting my relationships and career prospects. He positioned the sales as an intervention designed to free me from responsibilities I could not handle. As the evening progressed, I noticed Derek paying particular attention to his phone, constantly checking messages and making brief calls. When I asked about his communications, Derek explained that he was coordinating final paperwork with buyers and attorneys. He claimed the California investors were very detail-oriented and required frequent updates about closing procedures. Derek's explanation sounded plausible, but something about his behavior felt wrong. Late that night, after most family members had gone home or retired to guest bedrooms, I decided to investigate Derek's claims more thoroughly. I started by examining the closing documents he had shown everyone earlier. Under closer scrutiny, I noticed several inconsistencies that had escaped my attention during the initial shock of his announcement. The discovery that changed everything came when I found Derek in the kitchen at 2 a.m, whispering into his phone while reviewing paperwork at the counter. As I approached quietly, I heard him say something that made my blood freeze. "Angela, baby, everything is going perfectly. The family bought the whole story, and by the time they figure out what really happened, we'll be long gone." Angela. The name rang a bell, but it took me several moments to place it. Then I remembered Angela Martinez was the receptionist at Phoenix Property Partners, the main management company that handled 4 of my rental properties. She was a bubbly 24-year-old who always greeted me warmly when I visited their offices. Angela had access to tenant files, maintenance reports, and financial records for all properties under the company's management. The pieces of Derek's elaborate deception suddenly clicked into place. Derek had been secretly dating Angela for months, using their relationship to gain access to confidential information about my rental properties. She had been feeding him details about tenant complaints, repair costs, vacancy rates, and cash flow problems in exchange for his promises of love and commitment. Derek used this insider information to craft his convincing lies about property struggles and buyer negotiations. My own brother had seduced an innocent young woman into betraying her professional responsibilities, all to execute a scheme that would devastate our entire family. The revelation of Derek's manipulation of Angela added another layer of cruelty to his already despicable behavior. He had not only stolen from his family, but had also exploited a vulnerable young woman's emotions to achieve his goals. December 27th morning brought the first cracks in Derek's carefully constructed facade. I was having coffee with my father on the back patio when my phone rang with a call from Thomas Rodriguez, the property manager who handled my Glendale duplex. Thomas was calling about urgent plumbing repairs needed in Unit B, where the tenant had reported water damage from a burst pipe in the bathroom wall. When I mentioned that Derek had sold the property, Thomas responded with complete confusion. He asked me to repeat what I had said, then explained that no sale documentation had crossed his desk. Thomas confirmed that he still held all keys, maintained all tenant contact information, and had received no communication from any buyers about property transfers. According to his records, I remained the sole owner of the Glendale duplex, and rent payments for January were due in 5 days. The brief conversation with Thomas planted seeds of serious doubt, but Derek quickly appeared with more fake documentation when I confronted him. Derek explained Thomas's confusion as typical post-sale disorganization that occurred when property managers were not properly notified about ownership changes. He produced additional paperwork showing detailed transition timelines and claimed that Thomas would receive official notification within 48 hours. However, I had started paying closer attention to Derek's documents, and the inconsistencies were becoming impossible to ignore. Property addresses were incorrect on several contracts. Closing dates were listed as occurring on Christmas Day, when no legal offices would have been open for business. Buyer signatures varied dramatically across different documents, suggesting multiple people had signed the same name, or that signatures had been forged entirely. The family's confidence in Derek began wavering when their banks started questioning the $4,000 checks he had distributed. Several family members received calls about holds being placed on deposits pending verification of account information. Derek dismissed these inquiries as standard procedure for large transactions during holiday periods when banks operated with reduced staff and heightened security protocols. My mother grew particularly concerned when her bank specifically mentioned suspicious account activity related to Derek's check. The bank representative explained that the check had been drawn from an account with insufficient funds and irregular transaction patterns. Derek assured my mother that the bank's concerns were temporary and would resolve automatically once their verification systems processed the property sale documentation. That afternoon, I began secretly investigating the California buyers Derek claimed had purchased my properties. Using the contact information from Derek's fake contracts, I discovered that most addresses led to vacant lots or non-existent buildings. Phone numbers connected to disconnected voicemail systems with generic messages that provided no identifying information about actual people or businesses. The supposed buyer for my Mesa fourplex was allegedly named Jonathan Williams, with an address in Beverly Hills. When I looked up the address online, it belonged to a Starbucks coffee shop in a strip mall. The phone number for Jonathan Williams had been disconnected for over 6 months, according to the telephone company's automated message. Similar investigations revealed that all 8 buyers Derek claimed to have found were completely fictitious. Addresses where fake phone numbers were invalid, and the names appeared to belong to people whose social media profiles showed them living ordinary lives with no connection to real estate investment or California wealth. As I compiled evidence of Derek's deception, the most disturbing discovery involved our 82-year-old grandmother, Helen Rodriguez. Grandmother Helen lived in an assisted living facility and relied on a trust fund managed by Derek to cover her medical expenses and daily care costs. Derek had power of attorney over Helen's finances because our parents traveled frequently for work and trusted his mathematical skills with complex financial arrangements. Bank records I obtained through Helen's consent showed that Derek had been systematically draining her trust fund over the past 3 months. Large withdrawals coincided perfectly with Derek's preparation for the Christmas deception. The $4,000 checks Derek had given to family members were written from grandmother Helen's account, using funds designated for her medical care and assisted living expenses. Derek had stolen $64,000 from our grandmother's trust fund to create the appearance of legitimate property sale proceeds. The checks would initially appear valid when deposited because Helen's account contained sufficient funds. However, once the bank completed its standard verification process for large transactions, the checks would bounce because Derek had no authority to distribute trust fund money to family members for non-medical purposes. The revelation that Derek was stealing from our vulnerable grandmother transformed my anger into a burning determination to stop his criminal behavior. This was no longer just about property deception or family embarrassment. Derek was committing elder abuse, violating his fiduciary responsibilities, and endangering the health and safety of the woman who had helped raise both of us. That evening, I called my attorney, Patricia Wells, who specialized in real estate law and had helped me purchase several of my rental properties. Patricia was shocked by Derek's scheme and immediately recommended contacting law enforcement. She explained that Derek's actions constituted multiple felonies, including wire fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft. Patricia warned that Derek's behavior would likely escalate if not stopped immediately. As December 27th ended, I realized that confronting Derek privately was no longer sufficient. His deception involved criminal activity that threatened not just my business interests, but the welfare of my elderly grandmother and the financial security of my entire extended family. Derek had crossed lines that required legal intervention and law enforcement involvement. The weight of discovering Derek's true nature settled on my shoulders like a crushing burden. This was not just sibling rivalry or family disagreement. My younger brother was a calculating criminal who had spent months planning an elaborate scheme to defraud his own family while endangering our grandmother's health and safety. The boy I had protected and guided through childhood had become someone I no longer recognized. December 28th brought a cascade of revelations that shattered Derek's elaborate deception like glass hitting concrete. All 8 property managers returned from their holiday breaks and called me within minutes of each other, creating a symphony of confusion and concern that Derek could no longer explain away. Thomas Rodriguez called first, followed immediately by Maria Santos from Desert Vista Properties, then Kevin Chang from Southwest Rental Management. Linda Morrison, Robert Kim, Susan Parker, Miguel Hernandez, and David Thompson all reached out before noon, each expressing identical bewilderment about supposed property sales that had never occurred. Every property manager confirmed the same devastating facts. No transfer documents had been filed with their offices. No buyers had contacted them about property acquisitions. No closing attorneys had requested tenant information or lease agreements, and no sale proceedings had taken place whatsoever. According to official records maintained by all 8 management companies, I remained the legal owner of every single rental property, and January rent collection was proceeding normally. The family's $4,000 checks began bouncing with mathematical precision throughout the morning. Banks across Phoenix notified recipients about insufficient funds and imposed penalty fees ranging from $35 to $50 per returned check. My mother received the first notification at 9:30 in the morning, followed by calls to Uncle Robert, Aunt Carol, Cousin Jennifer, and every other family member who had attempted to deposit Derek's generous gifts. The bounced checks created immediate financial hardship for relatives who had already spent portions of the money or made commitments based on Derek's promised windfall. Uncle Robert had scheduled transmission repairs for his truck based on having $4,000 available. Aunt Carol had made a tuition payment for her daughter's spring semester classes. Cousin Jennifer had booked non-refundable airline tickets for her planned Hawaii vacation. Family members began calling each other in panic, demanding explanations for the failed transactions, and seeking someone to blame for their sudden financial embarrassment. The festive Christmas atmosphere transformed into anger, confusion, and bitter accusations as relatives realized they had been victims of an elaborate fraud. Derek had mysteriously disappeared from our parents' house, sometime during the night, taking his personal belongings and leaving only a brief note claiming he had urgent business meetings in California. Nobody knew his exact whereabouts, and his cell phone went directly to voicemail when family members tried to reach him for explanations about the bounced checks. My investigation into Derek's fabricated buyer personas revealed the shocking extent of his identity theft scheme. Derek had stolen photos and personal information from social media profiles belonging to innocent people across California, creating fake buyer identities complete with manufactured financial statements and fraudulent purchase histories. The supposed real estate investors were actually teachers, nurses, retail workers, and other ordinary Americans whose online presence Derek had exploited for his criminal enterprise. Jonathan Williams, the alleged buyer for my Mesa fourplex, was actually a high school mathematics teacher in Sacramento, whose Facebook photos Derek had stolen to create a fake investor profile. The supposed Jennifer Chen, who allegedly purchased my Scottsdale rental, was a pediatric nurse in San Diego, whose professional headshots Derek had appropriated from her LinkedIn account. Derek had created 8 distinct buyer personas using stolen identities, complete with forged financial documents and fabricated real estate portfolios. Angela Martinez finally confessed her role in Derek's scheme. When confronted by her supervisors at Phoenix Property Partners about the confidential information breach, through tears, she revealed that Derek had pursued her romantically for 6 months, promising to marry her and start a legitimate real estate investment business together using profits from his brilliant financial strategies. Angela explained that Derek had convinced her their relationship required complete honesty and transparency, which included sharing information about her work responsibilities. Derek gradually manipulated Angela into providing details about tenant issues, maintenance costs, and property performance metrics, claiming he needed the information to help his brother make better business decisions. Angela believed she was helping Derek support my struggling rental business, not enabling him to commit fraud against his own family. The betrayal of trust became even more painful when Angela revealed that Derek had stopped returning her phone calls and text messages immediately after Christmas morning. Derek had abandoned the young woman who had risked her career to help him, leaving Angela to face professional consequences and potential criminal charges for her unwitting participation in his fraud scheme. Property managers across Phoenix began coordinating their response to Derek's deception, sharing information about the scope of his identity theft and false buyer schemes. The Arizona Department of Real Estate launched an investigation into Derek's unauthorized practice of real estate activities without proper licensing or legal authority. Derek's actions had violated numerous state and federal regulations governing property transactions and financial fraud. The most devastating discovery came when I accessed grandmother Helen's trust account with her written permission and my attorney's assistance. Derek had completely emptied the trust fund, withdrawing every penny of the $200,000 designated for Helen's medical care and assisted living expenses. Bank security footage from Christmas Eve showed Derek making large cash withdrawals, while our family celebrated together, completely unaware that their beloved grandmother's future security was being stolen by her trusted caretaker. Derek had not just committed fraud. He had perpetrated elder abuse against the woman who had helped raise him and shown him unconditional love throughout his childhood. Grandmother Helen's trust fund represented her life savings, Social Security benefits, and pension distributions accumulated over decades of careful financial planning. Derek had destroyed her financial security to fund his elaborate deception and personal escape plan. The realization that Derek had fled to Mexico using stolen funds from our grandmother's medical account transformed family anger into unified determination for justice. This was no longer about property sales or bounce checks. Derek had endangered the health and welfare of a vulnerable, elderly woman who depended on family members for protection and care. Law enforcement agencies began coordinating an international investigation into Derek's whereabouts and financial activities. Derek's digital footprint revealed credit card purchases at luxury resorts in Cancun, confirming that he was living lavishly in Mexico while his family dealt with the devastating consequences of his crimes. The moment I realized Derek was living in luxury, while grandmother Helen faced potential eviction from her assisted living facility, something fundamental shifted inside me. The confusion and hurt transformed into focused determination to protect my family and hold Derek accountable for his criminal behavior. I contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division early on December the 29th, filing detailed reports about Derek's wire fraud, elder abuse, and international money laundering activities. Special Agent Rebecca Morrison took my case and immediately recognized the serious federal implications of Derek's scheme. Agent Morrison explained that Derek's crimes crossed state and international boundaries, making this a high-priority investigation for federal prosecutors. Attorney Patricia Wells connected me with specialists in family fraud recovery and elder abuse prosecution. The legal team included prosecutors experienced in international asset recovery who could pursue Derek's Mexican property purchases and freeze his foreign bank accounts. Patricia warned that Derek's sophistication and advanced planning suggested this was not his first criminal enterprise, and investigators would likely discover additional victims and fraudulent schemes. Working with bank security departments, I helped trace Derek's financial movements leading up to his escape to Mexico. Derek had made several critical mistakes in his planning that created opportunities for law enforcement to track his activities and recover stolen assets. His arrogance and sense of invincibility had led him to leave digital evidence that prosecutors could use to build an overwhelming case against him. Derek's most significant error was using the stolen trust fund money to purchase a luxury condominium in Cancun under his real name. Mexican property records are public information, and Derek's purchase created a substantial legal asset that could be seized through international court proceedings. The condominium represented a direct connection between Derek's identity and the stolen funds, providing prosecutors with clear evidence of money laundering and asset concealment. I organized a family meeting for December 30th to reveal the complete scope of Derek's betrayal and coordinate our collective response to his crimes. Initially, several family members remained resistant to accepting the full truth about Derek's character and criminal behavior. Uncle Robert insisted there must be some explanation for the bounced checks that would vindicate Derek's intentions. Aunt Carol suggested that Derek might have been victimized by sophisticated scammers who manipulated him into believing the property sales were legitimate. However, as I presented bank records, property manager confirmations, and evidence of Derek's identity theft schemes, family resistance gradually crumbled under the weight of overwhelming proof. The meeting became an emotional healing session where family members acknowledged their unfair treatment of me and expressed genuine remorse for doubting my integrity and business competence. My mother broke down crying as she realized how thoroughly Derek had manipulated her emotions and exploited her maternal instincts. She apologized for dismissing my concerns and admitting that Derek's supposed success had seemed too good to be true. My father shook my hand and formally apologized for questioning my judgment, acknowledging that Derek's deception had been far more sophisticated than anyone could have anticipated. The family meeting transformed our collective grief and anger into unified action. Everyone committed to supporting Grandmother Helen's immediate needs, while legal proceedings recovered her stolen funds. Relatives pooled resources to ensure Helen could remain in her assisted living facility without interruption to her medical care or daily support services. The crisis brought our family closer together and established me as the trusted financial advisor for future decisions. Property managers throughout Phoenix rallied around my rental business, offering reduced fees, extended payment terms, and additional support services to help me maintain operations during the recovery process. Thomas Rodriguez, Maria Santos, and the other property managers recognized me as an honest operator who had been victimized by circumstances beyond my control. Their professional support demonstrated the value of maintaining ethical business relationships built on trust and mutual respect. Kevin Chang from Southwest Rental Management volunteered to implement enhanced security protocols across my properties to prevent future unauthorized access to confidential information. Linda Morrison offered to coordinate with other management companies to share intelligence about potential fraud schemes targeting rental property owners. The property management community's response showed how Derek's crimes had affected professional relationships throughout the industry. Angela Martinez cooperated fully with law enforcement investigators, providing crucial testimony about Derek's manipulation techniques and information theft methods. Her detailed accounts of Derek's psychological manipulation helped prosecutors understand the sophisticated nature of his criminal planning. Angela's willingness to testify despite her own legal jeopardy demonstrated genuine remorse for her unwitting participation in Derek's scheme. The investigation revealed that Derek had been researching similar fraud schemes for over a year before targeting our family. Computer forensics specialists discovered browser histories showing Derek had studied real estate fraud cases, identity theft techniques, and international money laundering methods. Derek's crimes were not impulsive decisions, but carefully planned criminal enterprises that required extensive preparation and research. FBI agents coordinated with Mexican authorities to locate Derek and begin extradition proceedings. Derek's luxury lifestyle in Cancun made him easy to track through credit card records and resort registration systems. His arrogance and assumption that Mexico would protect him from American law enforcement proved to be fatal mistakes that facilitated his eventual capture. The legal machinery of justice began moving with impressive efficiency as multiple agencies coordinated their efforts to hold Derek accountable and recover stolen assets. Federal prosecutors, state investigators, international law enforcement, and civil attorneys all worked together to ensure Derek faced appropriate consequences for his crimes, while maximizing asset recovery for his victims. On January 15th, Mexican federal police arrested Derek at the luxury Marriott Resort in Cancun, where he had been living under his real name, apparently confident that his elaborate deception would never be discovered. The arrest came during Derek's poolside breakfast, where he was spending stolen money on premium champagne and lobster, while our grandmother rationed her medications to stretch her remaining funds. FBI agents who accompanied Mexican authorities described Derek's shock and disbelief when confronted with arrest warrants for multiple federal felonies. Derek initially claimed innocence and demanded to speak with lawyers, but his protests crumbled when investigators presented overwhelming evidence of his crimes. Security footage from his Arizona bank withdrawals, digital records of his fake buyer schemes, and testimony from Angela Martinez created an airtight case that left no room for denial or excuse. Derek's luxury condominium in Cancun became a crucial piece of evidence demonstrating his criminal intent and asset concealment strategies. The property had cost $160,000 paid entirely in cash using funds stolen from grandmother Helen's trust account. Mexican authorities seized the condominium, immediately beginning legal proceedings to liquidate the asset and return proceeds to Derek's victims. International attorneys working with my legal team discovered additional hidden assets that Derek had acquired using stolen funds. Derek had opened bank accounts in 3 Mexican financial institutions, purchased a luxury automobile, and invested in cryptocurrency portfolios designed to obscure the source of his criminal profits. Each discovery provided additional evidence of Derek's sophisticated money laundering operation and premeditated criminal planning. The investigation expanded beyond Derek's Christmas deception when prosecutors discovered evidence of previous fraudulent schemes targeting other victims. Computer forensics revealed that Derek had attempted similar property fraud against our cousin Marcus, researching his commercial real estate holdings and developing plans to forge sale documents for Marcus's downtown office building. Derek had also explored methods to access Uncle Robert's retirement account and redirect his pension distributions. Derek's pattern of targeting vulnerable family members with trusted financial information revealed the calculating nature of his criminal personality. Prosecutors charged Derek with operating a continuing criminal enterprise, specifically designed to exploit family relationships and financial trust for personal gain. The federal charges carried potential prison sentences exceeding 20 years and mandatory restitution requirements. Grandmother Helen became the central focus of our family's recovery efforts as we worked to restore her financial security and ensure continued medical care. The family contributed over $30,000 immediately to cover Helen's assisted living expenses while legal proceedings recovered her stolen trust fund. Helen's doctors confirmed that financial stress had aggravated her existing health conditions, adding potential medical malpractice claims to Derek's criminal liability. Angela Martinez's cooperation with federal investigators proved invaluable in understanding Derek's manipulation techniques and preventing similar schemes against other property management companies. Angela testified before a federal grand jury about Derek's systematic approach to gaining her trust, exploiting her professional access, and manipulating her emotions to facilitate his criminal enterprise. Her testimony helped prosecutors demonstrate Derek's sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and criminal planning. The property management industry in Phoenix implemented new security protocols based on lessons learned from Derek's information theft scheme. Companies enhanced background check procedures, restricted access to confidential client information, and developed training programs to help employees recognize and report potential fraud schemes. Derek's crimes ultimately strengthened professional standards across the entire rental property management sector. Derek's extradition to Arizona occurred on February 3rd, with federal marshals transporting him directly from Mexican custody to a maximum security facility in Phoenix. Derek's appearance in federal court drew significant media attention as prosecutors described the scope of his crimes and their impact on elderly and vulnerable victims. Local news organizations covered the case as an example of sophisticated family fraud schemes that were becoming increasingly common across the Southwest. During Derek's initial court proceedings, prosecutors revealed additional evidence that shocked even experienced federal investigators. Derek had recorded the entire real estate fraud seminar that inspired his Christmas deception, providing investigators with clear proof of premeditation and conspiracy to commit multiple felonies. The seminar recording showed Derek taking detailed notes about family exploitation techniques, elder abuse strategies, and international asset concealment methods. The fraud seminar evidence established that Derek's crimes were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader criminal education that he had pursued deliberately. Federal prosecutors used this evidence to file additional charges related to conspiracy, racketeering, and participation in organized criminal enterprises. Derek's recorded notes from the seminar demonstrated his systematic approach to targeting family members and exploiting their trust for financial gain. Derek's defense attorneys attempted to negotiate plea agreements that would reduce his potential prison sentence, but federal prosecutors refused to accept any deals that did not include full restitution to all victims and substantial prison time. The strength of the evidence against Derek and the serious nature of his crimes against vulnerable family members made lenient treatment impossible to justify. Federal judges reviewing Derek's case expressed particular concern about his targeting of elderly victims and abuse of family trust relationships. Court documents described Derek's crimes as representing a serious threat to family financial security and elder safety throughout American communities. Derek's case became a precedent for prosecuting sophisticated family fraud schemes with appropriate severity. 6 months after Derek's arrest, he stood before federal judge Patricia Williams and pleaded guilty to 12 felony charges, including wire fraud, elder abuse identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy to operate a continuing criminal enterprise. Judge Williams sentenced Derek to 12 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, followed by 5 years of supervised probation, with complete financial monitoring and restricted access to electronic communications. Derek was ordered to pay full restitution totaling $437,000 to all victims, including grandmother Helen's stolen trust fund, family members' financial losses, property management companies' security costs, and legal expenses incurred during the investigation and prosecution. The court established a payment schedule requiring Derek to surrender all assets, work in federal prison industries, and dedicate 90% of any future earnings to victim compensation. The seized Cancun condominium sold for $190,000, generating more than enough proceeds to fully restore grandmother Helen's trust fund, with additional compensation for medical expenses and emotional suffering. Helen's financial security was completely reestablished, and her assisted living facility expanded her care services using the additional settlement funds. Helen's doctors reported significant improvements in her health and mental well-being once financial stress was eliminated. Grandmother Helen expressed profound gratitude for my protection and advocacy during her most vulnerable period. She formally appointed me as successor trustee for her financial affairs, acknowledging that Derek's betrayal had demonstrated the importance of choosing family advocates based on character and integrity rather than charm and promises. Helen's trust in my judgment helped heal some of the family wounds created by Derek's manipulation and deception. My rental property business flourished beyond previous performance levels as I implemented security improvements and management practices learned from Derek's criminal exploitation. I established enhanced tenant screening procedures, diversified property management relationships across multiple companies, and created transparent financial reporting systems that prevented future unauthorized access to confidential business information. The 8 rental properties achieved full occupancy within 3 months of Derek's conviction, generating record monthly income and building substantial cash reserves for future improvements and expansion opportunities. Property managers throughout Phoenix recommended my business to other investors, citing my ethical practices and professional integrity as model standards for the industry. Derek's attempt to destroy my business had ultimately strengthened my reputation and market position. Family relationships emerged stronger and more unified than they had been before Derek's deception shattered our previous dynamics. Regular family meetings addressed financial matters with complete transparency, eliminating the secretive decision-making that had enabled Derek's manipulation. I accepted the role of family financial advisor, providing guidance for major purchases, investment decisions, and long-term planning based on principles of honesty, competence, and mutual accountability. My parents formally apologized for their previous favoritism toward Derek and acknowledged that his superficial charm had blinded them to character defects that should have raised serious concerns. They committed to evaluating family members based on consistent actions and demonstrated integrity rather than impressive presentations or promised outcomes. The family's recognition of their misjudgment helped heal the emotional wounds created by years of being overshadowed by Derek's manipulative personality. Angela Martinez rebuilt her career with a different property management company using her painful experience with Derek's manipulation to help train other employees about recognizing and reporting potential fraud schemes. Angela became an advocate for professional ethics and workplace security within the real estate management industry. Her transformation from unwitting accomplice to ethical leader demonstrated the possibility of positive growth from traumatic experiences. Angela's testimony during Derek's trial helped establish new legal precedents for prosecuting romantic manipulation schemes that exploit workplace access to confidential information. Her willingness to accept responsibility for her mistakes while fighting to prevent similar victimization of other young professionals became an inspiring example of personal accountability and professional redemption. The legal victory against Derek inspired me to establish the Helen Rodriguez Trust Foundation, named in honor of my grandmother's courage and resilience during her financial victimization. The foundation provides legal assistance, emotional support, and financial recovery resources for elderly Americans and their families facing similar fraud schemes. Derek's story became a central component of educational presentations designed to help families recognize and prevent financial exploitation of vulnerable relatives. The foundation's work expanded beyond individual case assistance to include advocacy for stronger elder protection laws, enhanced criminal penalties for family fraud schemes, and improved financial institution procedures for detecting suspicious account activity. Derek's crimes ultimately contributed to positive legislative and regulatory changes that protected thousands of potential victims across Arizona and neighboring states. Local law enforcement agencies incorporated lessons learned from Derek's case into training programs for investigating sophisticated family fraud schemes. The multi-agency coordination that led to Derek's conviction became a model for addressing complex financial crimes that crossed jurisdictional boundaries. Derek's prosecution demonstrated the effectiveness of combining federal resources with state and local expertise to protect vulnerable community members. Derek's conviction and imprisonment provided complete closure for our family's traumatic experience, while establishing important legal precedents for future cases involving similar crimes. The justice system's thorough response to Derek's actions validated our family's faith in legal institutions and encouraged other victims to report financial exploitation without fear of blame or embarrassment. Federal prosecutors who handled Derek's case reported that his conviction led to increased reporting of family fraud schemes throughout the Southwest region. Derek's story encouraged other families to recognize warning signs of financial manipulation and seek help before criminals could complete their devastating schemes. The educational value of Derek's prosecution extended far beyond our immediate family to benefit entire communities. The most meaningful outcome of our ordeal was the transformation of family relationships from superficial pleasantness to genuine closeness based on shared values and mutual support. Derek's betrayal forced us to examine our assumptions about loyalty, trust, and character, ultimately strengthening our bonds through honest communication and demonstrated commitment to protecting each other from future harm. Derek's story teaches us that trust must be earned through consistent actions over extended periods, rather than impressive presentations or promised outcomes that seem too good to be true. Family loyalty means protecting each other from harm, including the courage to question suspicious behavior even when it initially appears beneficial. True success comes from building sustainable systems based on integrity, competence, and accountability, rather than exploiting others' trust for short-term personal gain. Looking back, I realized that Derek's deception was only possible because our family had confused charm with character and promises with performance. We learned to evaluate people based on their actions during difficult situations rather than their words during comfortable times. The painful experience of Derek's betrayal ultimately taught us the difference between genuine family love and manipulative exploitation disguised as concern. The foundation I established in Grandmother Helen's honor continues expanding its mission to protect vulnerable Americans from family financial fraud while educating communities about recognition and prevention strategies. Derek's crimes created lasting positive change that extends far beyond our immediate family to benefit thousands of people who will never experience similar victimization because of lessons learned from our tragedy. Our family's journey from devastating betrayal to complete recovery and stronger unity demonstrates that even the most painful experiences can generate positive outcomes when faced with courage, determination, and commitment to justice. Derek's attempt to destroy our financial security and family relationships ultimately strengthened both, proving that criminal schemes built on deception and exploitation cannot withstand sustained opposition from united families supported by competent legal and law enforcement professionals. Today, as I write this story, Derek remains in federal prison with over 10 years remaining on his sentence. He has expressed no remorse for his crimes and continues attempting to manipulate prison staff and fellow inmates with the same techniques he used against our family. Derek's unchanged character vindicates our decision to pursue maximum legal accountability, rather than accepting his superficial apologies or promises of reform. The rental properties Derek tried to steal continue generating steady income that supports not only my financial goals, but also contributes to the Foundation's mission of protecting other families from similar exploitation. Every month's rent payment represents victory over Derek's criminal intentions and proof that honest business practices ultimately triumph over sophisticated fraud schemes. I want to ask you something important. Have you ever noticed warning signs that someone in your family might be manipulating financial information or exploiting elderly relatives for personal gain? Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if the person seems charming or claims to be helping. Share this story to help other families recognize these red flags before criminals can complete their devastating schemes. Thank you for listening to our family's journey from betrayal to justice. I hope our experience helps you protect your loved ones and build stronger relationships based on genuine trust and mutual accountability. Remember that real family loyalty means having the courage to question suspicious behavior and seek help when vulnerable relatives face potential exploitation. Like this video if our story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life experiences about overcoming family challenges, and share this with anyone who might benefit from learning about sophisticated fraud prevention. Stay vigilant, trust your instincts, and never hesitate to seek professional help when family financial situations seem too good to be true.